This is Ask a Couples Counsellor, a show that answers all the relationship questions you're too afraid to ask. On the show, we'll take your questions and give you the tools you need to build trust and intimacy with your partner. I'm your host, Neha Kapoor. I'm a registered clinical counsellor and psychotherapist, and I'm really passionate about helping couples navigate the challenges that we all go through. Because after all, every relationship encounters some stormy weather now and then. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Ask a Couples Counsellor. Today's episode dives into a topic that so many of us can relate to. Why do we gravitate towards partners who can't give us what we truly need? And how can we recognize the red flags before becoming emotionally invested? From attachment styles to unconscious patterns, we'll explore the psychology behind why this happens, and more importantly, how to break the cycle. We'll also explore the fear and anxiety that comes with ending a relationship and offer strategies to help you make empowered decisions that prioritize your emotional well-being. If you've ever felt stuck in a relationship that isn't fulfilling, or if you're anxious about walking away, this episode is for you. So grab a cup of coffee, pour yourself a glass of wine, or settle in with some tea, because we're about to have an insightful conversation. All right, let's dive into it. Our first question for today comes from Molly in Auckland. Let's have a listen to Molly's question.
Why do I gravitate towards people who can't provide what I need in a relationship? How do I work it out before I get emotionally invested?
This is such a powerful question, Molly, and it resonates with so many of us because it touches on a deeply human experience, the desire for connection and the frustration of unmet needs in relationships. So from a psychological perspective, gravitating towards people who can't meet your needs in relationships may stem from several factors, and I'll attempt to answer some of those for you. So firstly, I want to talk about attachment style. So if you have an anxious or avoidant attachment style, it could drive you to pursue unavailable or inconsistent partners. And this may be linked to unmet emotional needs from early relationships, often with caregivers. So say, for example, if you grew up in a household where one or both of your caregivers were emotionally unavailable or inconsistent in meeting your needs, as a result, you might have developed an anxious attachment style where you constantly seek reassurance or validation from your partners. You may unconsciously gravitate towards partners who are emotionally distant or unavailable, hoping that if you can earn their love, it will validate your worth. And this dynamic mirrors the inconsistent emotional attention you experienced as a child. Alternatively, with an avoidant attachment style, if you grew up in an environment where expressing emotions was discouraged or your needs were minimized, you might have learned to suppress your own needs in relationships. And this could lead you to choose partners who don't demand emotional closeness, thereby reinforcing your tendency to avoid deep intimacy, even though deep down you crave connection. So in both cases, your attachment style creates a pull towards partners who reflect the emotional dynamics of your early relationships, often leading to unmet needs and emotional dissatisfaction. So recognizing these patterns can help you shift towards healthier, more secure relationship dynamics. The other thing that I would like to mention is unconscious patterns. So sometimes we are drawn to familiar dynamics, even if they're unhealthy. So if past relationships, either romantic or familial, involved unreliability or inconsistency, you may subconsciously recreate these patterns, hoping for a different outcome. So say, for example, if you were in a family where one parent was emotionally distant and inconsistent in their affection, you might have grown accustomed to chasing that parent's approval and love, always hoping they'd change and finally meet your emotional needs. I know this happens to many of us. So even though it was unfulfilling, it becomes a familiar dynamic. And later in life, you might unconsciously find yourself attracted to a romantic partner who is similarly unavailable or inconsistent, even though this leaves you feeling neglected or unimportant. So you may hold on, hoping that this partner will eventually change, just like you'd hoped your parent would. So this dynamic, though painful, feels familiar and your subconscious is drawn to it. So thinking that this time the outcome might be different is usually what you're hoping for in that partnership. So, in these situations, you're often repeating old patterns, trying to resolve unresolved issues from the past. However, until those unconscious patterns are brought to light and examined, they can lead you to choose relationships that don't provide the emotional fulfillment you're seeking. And the last thing that I would like to mention is self worth and boundaries. So, difficulty asserting your needs or believing you deserve more can lead to accepting less than what you truly want. And this may reflect a deeper struggle with self worth or boundaries. So, suppose you've had past experiences where you felt undervalued or ignored, perhaps in childhood or previous relationships. These experiences may have affected your sense of self worth, leading you to believe consciously or unconsciously that you don't deserve better treatment. So, as a result, when entering a relationship, you might struggle to assert your needs, thinking that asking for more, either emotional support, commitment, respect, could drive the person away or make you seem needy. So, in this scenario, you may find yourself accepting a partner who gives you little in return, downplaying your needs to keep the relationship intact. For example, if your partner consistently fails to show up emotionally or isn't putting in the effort you need, you might rationalize their behavior or convince yourself that this is the best that you can get. And this lack of boundaries can keep you stuck in a relationship where your emotional needs aren't being met, perpetuating a cycle of unfulfillment. So, by working on your own self worth and learning to set firm boundaries, you can begin to prioritize relationships where your needs are respected and met, and ultimately aligning your external relationships with the value that you place on yourself. Now, to answer the second part of your question, to avoid emotional investment in such relationships, there are some strategies that you can follow. So, firstly, I would say have clarity on core needs. So, identify your non negotiables early on and use them as a filter when evaluating potential partners. So, be clear on what fulfillment looks like for you in a relationship. For instance, if feeling emotionally connected and understood by your partner is essential to you, this would be a non negotiable core need. And I would say do some mindful dating. And what I mean by this is observe behavior and communication patterns from the start. Does this person show consistency? Do they show emotional availability and effort in understanding your needs? Early red flags shouldn't be ignored. And have some emotional awareness. Look, regularly check in with yourself. If you notice that you're becoming emotionally invested without getting your needs met, pause and evaluate why you're continuing to pursue the relationship. This is something I do say that trust your gut, trust your intuition, because even when you fail to acknowledge it, your intuition knows. So trust that. The other thing that I would like to say is explore in therapy. Consider your past relationship patterns and any unresolved wounds that may be influencing your choices. Processing these in therapy can help you break cycles and foster healthier relationship dynamics. So, understanding your patterns and recognizing signs early can help you make more intentional choices in future relationships. I hope that answers your question, Molly. All right, let's get into our second question for today, which comes from Tom in Ringwood. Let's have a listen to Tom's question.
My question is, how do I overcome my anxiety about ending a relationship with someone who I'm not feeling a connection with?
This is a really interesting question, Tom, because it touches on the emotional conflict many people face in relationships, the fear of hurting someone and the discomfort of uncertainty and the anxiety of change. So, overcoming anxiety about ending a relationship often involves understanding and addressing both the emotional and cognitive aspects of anxiety. So, I would say start by acknowledging your own emotions and feelings. Look, it's natural to feel anxious when ending a relationship, especially if there's a fear of hurting the other person or facing the uncertainty of being alone. So recognize that feeling disconnected is valid and your emotional needs deserve to be met. So identify the source of your anxiety. Is your anxiety coming from a fear of being alone, guilt about hurting your partner, or uncertainty about making the right decision? Clarifying the root of your anxiety can help you manage it more effectively. So, say for instance, if it's guilt, remind yourself that staying in a relationship out of obligation doesn't serve either of you. And the other thing that I would say is try and shift your perspective. Look, there's a really famous quote by a person called Wayne Dyer. He's a self-help author and motivational speaker, and I personally really love what he said. He said, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So ending a relationship is not a failure. It's about aligning yourself with a healthier, more fulfilling future. So sometimes recognizing that staying in a disconnected relationships prevent both partners from finding happiness can relieve some of the pressure. And I would say prepare and plan. So anxiety often stems from feeling out of control. So plan how you will communicate your feelings to your partner and be clear, compassionate, and honest. So having a clear idea of what you'll say can reduce anxiety and help you feel more in control of the situation. And also practice some self-compassion. So be gentle with yourself during this process, because remember that ending a relationship can be difficult, but it's a step towards emotional growth and well-being. So practice self-compassion by reminding yourself that you're taking care of your emotional health, which will ultimately lead to healthier relationships in the future. And if seeking support is an option for you, I would say do that, because talking to a therapist or trusted friend can help you process your emotions and fears. Because sometimes having an outside perspective can reinforce your decision and provide reassurance as you navigate the emotional complexities of ending a relationship. So by addressing the emotional and cognitive aspects of your anxiety, you'll find it easier to make decisions that prioritize your well-being and help you move forward with greater clarity and peace. I hope that answers your question, Tom. All right, that's it for today. And before I go, if you have any burning questions you want answered, please send them to novoempowercounselling@gmail.com. Let's navigate this journey together, because better relationships start with understanding. I can't wait to hear from you. You've been listening to Ask a Couples Counsellor, a show that answers all the relationship questions you're too afraid to ask. This show is produced by Novo Empower Counselling. We provide a range of services, including couples counselling, individual counselling, and online counselling. To find out more, visit our website novoempowercounselling.com.au. This show was produced with strategy and production support from Wavelength Creative. To make sure you don't miss an episode of Ask a Couples Counsellor, be sure to subscribe to or follow the show in your podcast app. And while you're there, I'd love it if you could leave me a 5-star review. It really helps others find the show. I'm your host, Neha Kapoor, and I'll see you in the next episode.